Welcome to From Betrayal to Breakthrough. I'm Dr. Debbie Silber, and today's guest is J. Scott MacMillan. J. Scott MacMillan is an author, entrepreneur, and certified NLP life coach. His coaching business, Hero Life, uses behavioral learning techniques, adult learning theory, and the hero's journey to help people learn new skills and apply critical thinking to daily life. Leveraging personal experiences and psychology expertise, MacMillan helps people overcome stuck periods, both in their personal lives and in business, to step into their true and authentic self. Follow him at jscottmacmillan.com. Do you have a hero's journey? Are you in the middle of one? Does this whole idea of a hero's journey sound weird or crazy? I'm about to have a conversation with J. Scott MacMillan about overcoming and becoming the hero in your own life. Hero? Me? Yes, you. And you're about to see exactly why. Here we go. Okay, everybody, I have J. Scott MacMillan with us today, and we're going to be talking about being the hero of your own life. How great does that sound? Welcome.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so great to have you with us today, Scott. So let's just get a sense of your background, just so we know where we're going with all of this hero stuff.
Yeah, the good old hero stuff. Well, yeah, I'll basically start with where I started in the book, which is when I turned 40. And I'd had a pretty golden life up until that point, really no adversities to speak of. And at 40, my body just kind of gave out, just kind of broke down. And it started with a kidney stone, went into severe stomach pain for 8-9 months, to severe back pain where I could barely walk. And along that, the doctors couldn't find any really problems. They couldn't really diagnose anything specific. So one day I was after about a year of just all this chronic pain, I was in the shower one morning and I heard this voice that said, "You must be doing something wrong. This is just no way to live life." Because my life had just spiraled down. It just gone from this, good corporate career, marriage, living in the suburbs, kids, the whole 9 yards, and just to where I could barely walk, could barely work. So that was the day I realized that I had to stop blaming the outside world for my problems and to go inside and look inside for the answer. Something I was doing or thinking wasn't working, but I didn't have a clue at that point. Well, 15 years later, I realized that day in the shower was what's called my call to adventure, which is a stage in the hero's journey that we'll get to in detail. But that was the first day where something woke me up. And it was this calling, this knowing that I had to do something different fundamentally with my life and my thinking and so on. But it took me a long time to figure this out. So fast forward through a divorce, through getting laid off from a corporate job I'd had for a long time, starting my own business, just a lot of change in my life. My body started to settle down. I started to heal, but I still didn't realize that inside I had this hole that, wasn't being, filled up. I didn't know then, but started when I was little. And we'll talk a little bit more about limiting beliefs, but I realized that I had these limiting beliefs that I carried with me as a child and that they were still sabotaging me as an adult. So I started to formulate I write a lot, journal a lot, and it started to formulate this book. And I was studying actually filmmaking, because that's one of my hobbies, is doing documentary films. And I ran across Joseph Campbell. He's the father of the hero's journey. And I'm reading through this and I'm understanding the 12 stages of the hero's journey. And I'm understanding, what he's trying to say, that all stories and myths from all time are based on this common theme of the hero that we follow through these stages. And I said, wow, my life is like that. I've gone through many stages like that. I'm kind of like the hero of my own life. And boom, the book was birthed, and I realized that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so I went in and got my NLP certified coaching and started coaching people in this whole concept of, if you put your life into these 12 stages of the hero's journey, you're really going to understand yourself in a profound way.
And I love that. And I really want to go through those 12 steps. But what's so interesting to me is, with so many people in the hero's journey, and I've certainly been through it myself, and when we use our biggest crisis to reveal our greatest gifts, it's wonderful. But what's interesting is it wasn't like there was one, earth-shattering moment for you. It was almost like a series of experiences. And there was just something where it was like, that's it, enough is enough. And I love that, because there are so many people listening and watching this podcast
who are saying, oh my gosh, that's me. I've either had my betrayal, I've had a series of experiences, whatever it is, and I'm kind of dealing with it or managing it, but I'm really not. It's keeping me in this kind of holding pattern, this limited holding pattern. And there's
Yeah.
something about realizing all these things I'm doing on the outside just aren't cutting it. And it's when we start looking within it. It sounds like that's what you did.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did, and I realized that there are different journeys that we go on, and some are small journeys, some are long. What I chose to do was take a good 15-20 year period and really put that into this full hero's journey because it's full of really interesting twists and turns. Um, and so it doesn't really matter how you focus this. If you view like say a serious event, like maybe the death of a loved one, you could wrap that in and make that one hero's journey because at one point you were before in your life, and then something happened and you had to deal with it. So you kind of have to learn to deal with that. Um, I like though that you can expand that in your life because that's going to be one event, maybe a couple stages, maybe one stage, and so I like to look at it almost like in this life perspective. I find that when I work with clients, a lot of time they're in the middle of the journey. We don't really know at this point, and they'll start to dissect this, and they'll say, "Oh, this was a journey." I'm like, "Well, yeah, that could be a journey, but I think you're still in this bigger journey to learn some lessons still."
And what I love about the journey too is it's not just getting through it. It's almost like you had to experience that to learn the lesson and do something so much bigger with it. And that's the gift.
Yeah,
That's the opportunity.
that's the gift. So, and what I really love is the last few stages of the hero's journey. They're really important. But let's dissect them if you want to. We'll just kind of go through
I'd love to.
some of them. Some pretty
Yeah,
quick.
let's go through those 12 stages.
Okay, so the first stage is called the ordinary world. This is where, so I'm going to bounce back and forth sometimes between this is how the hero's journey is laid out in stories or movies, and then how we are in our life because they're really connected. But the hero's journey was really conceived on in a theme of a story. So, like I said, all movies that we watch basically follow this hero through all these stages. Okay, so the ordinary world, that's where things begin. You're just living your life. You don't know of anything else that's going on. And then stage 2 happens, which is called the call to adventure. And this is where something happens in the story, an inciting event, if you will, like in stories. And this could be, like I said, death of a loved one. It could be loss of a career or a job. Could be a sickness. It really could be anything that really changes the trajectory of your life. You've got to do something different than you had before.
For the sake of our audience, it could definitely be betrayal.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah. And so now you've got to figure this out. Stage 3 though is refusal of the call because we're humans and we're afraid of change. We don't want to change. Sometimes we'd rather sit in this stuck environment not moving because we're afraid what's on the other side. That's just a human nature, right? But what's really cool about this and what I love about the hero's journey is what we all feel. We all have felt that. That's what all stories are based on. That's what all myths are based on. So it allows us to understand that we're not unique in this. It's like we're all together in this. This is a common human emotion. We're afraid. But eventually,
and it's so interesting because really think about it. Everything is uncomfortable until it becomes familiar. Just every single thing we've ever done.
Absolutely. And so the fourth stage then is meeting the mentor. So somewhere along the line, you're going to meet somebody that is going to give you some skills, some information, some tools, something that's going to help you finally answer that call and move across into the journey, which is stage 5, crossing the threshold. So we'll usually have someone in our life that will give us something, some way that will help us move across the threshold, stage 5. Now we are into the journey. We are in the unknown world.
And you know what, Scott? I just want to back up a little bit. The mentor doesn't have to be, it could just be an ordinary person or someone who's just experienced it, right? This doesn't have to be a professional somebody.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. Really, really good point. It's really anybody. It could be books. Like for me, a lot of times it was books. It was, could be therapists, could be mom and dad. Yeah, it could be anything. You will meet other mentors in your journey, but there's usually somebody right before you actually get the courage to move in. It's a key stage to think about in your life. So now we're in the hero's journey. We're in the journey. We're in the unknown world. What we knew before doesn't work in this world, so we've got to figure it out
Is that
on our
stage
own.
5, crossing the threshold?
Yes,
Okay.
crossing
Hmm.
the threshold.
Okay.
So literally, 6, 7, and 8 are kind of where I say you're sort of in the journey. You're going to find some enemies. You're going to find some allies. You're going to learn some skills. You're going to have to fight these metaphorical dragons, which you'll see in myths and in movies. Um, and typically, this is just figuring out for yourself like who we are. What works. And you're going to go. So this could be anything. This could be again many years of in this journey of different times and events that are happening in your life that you're learning the lessons. Some you're going to win, some you're going to lose, but you're going to learn from all of it. And so the next key stage is stage 9. That's finding the treasure. Finding the treasure is, okay, you now have whatever you were seeking in that journey. And typically we're seeking, it's something, knowledge. It even could just be, I want that perfect relationship, or I want that perfect career. It could be, healing from betrayal, from relationships, from anything. And so that treasure could be you feel now that you healed from whatever that trauma was or that issue that you've been, or it could be you got the great job or you found the perfect relationship. There's something of value that you feel now you've worked through these things and now you've gained that.
And I just, and before you move on, I really want to stress this. You cannot get to stage 9 until you go through 6, 7, and 8. And that's the part that we want to avoid at all costs because it's painful. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Slaying those dragons, facing those fears, walking into, those closets, right? Of just what will we find? That's the scary stuff. But I just want to make it just and accentuate that point. We cannot find that treasure until and unless we go through that.
Absolutely. Great point. It really is one of the central themes of the hero's journey of life, really. So we've got this treasure and we're thinking, okay, we got this figured out. But we still got 3 more stages. The journey's not done. And that's what people don't really understand. We've got to take that journey and bring it home to stage 12. So 10 and 11 are like the resurrection. At this point, we think we got this figured out. And the universe is going to test us one more time. The hero's journey will test this and say, do you really have this figured out? Let's find out. And you will then have another something that's going to be in the way of your progression. Could be another catastrophe. It could be anything that's going to make you rethink, do I really have this figured out? Sometimes it's going to knock you back and you may have to go through the series again, right? And this is the part that people don't understand, or maybe another powerful nugget is that's going to happen to you. You're going to think you got it all figured out, and then you're going to like, oh shit, I don't. And it's like, it's okay. It's part of the journey. You just get back up on your horse, or you figure out what that lesson is meant to be, and then you move forward. And that to me is really maybe one of the most powerful parts of the hero's journey, is that once you think you've found it, you've got to get it back home. You've got to, tuck that ball under your arm and go across the goal line. And so that's a really key point. When you finally do get home in stage 12, return home, this is the point now where you're going to tell the story. Like in movies and myths specifically, the hero comes home and they go back to the village. And if they've captured treasure, they give the treasure to the village, or, whatever they're going to do to help out the reason they've gone on this journey. And for us, it's typically when we've proven that we've really been able to make it, through that treasure, and now really having it, understanding ourselves. And we become our own mentors. So now we become the mentors because we've gone through the journey. We've learned these lessons. And now we can help people that either haven't started their journey or they're in the middle of their journey and they don't understand. And that's a really powerful feeling. Now, it doesn't mean you have to always, be in the traditional sense, but you will be a mentor. And now you'll start on your next journey, because the hero's journey is always a circle. You return home and you start on the next journey, but with brand new powers. You've got superpowers now, right? You've been through this. So your next journey, which may be more difficult or maybe not, you've got these new skills that you're going to apply to this next journey. And so that's the wonderful world of the hero's journey.
You know, Scott, what I would love to do, just for the sake of the audience, so they really see this in action, I'm going to walk through one of my experiences using these steps. And this way, everybody will see exactly how spot on this is. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
stage one, ordinary world, right? Here I was just going about my business, you know, running my family, 4 kids, 6 dogs, my business, thought everything was fine. The call to adventure, the event, my betrayal, rocked my world, shocked me like nothing I've ever experienced before. No, stage 2. Stage 3, refusal of the call, right? We're afraid. And I'm like, what the heck do I do with this? I have no idea how to move through this. Should I do this? Should I do that? I don't know. I was terrified. Stage 4, meeting the mentor. This for me was enrolling in a PhD program in transpersonal psychology. I had no idea why I was doing it. I just was obsessed with transformation. I was doing it. I didn't understand. And the mentor was this, you know, this program and this opportunity to do a study on betrayal. 5, crossing the threshold. And I think that's where we dive in and do the work. We're like, that's it. I'm going to figure this out. Okay, here I was. I'm going to figure this out. I don't know what it looks like, what it feels like, but it stinks what I'm going through, and it's got to be better than this. Am I on track so far?
Perfect.
Okay.
Absolutely.
6, 7, and 8. This is, you know, the enemies, the allies, just slaying the dragons, all of that. Yes, yes, yes. So much of that, because during this stage, I'm coming across all my own stuff. I'm dealing with all my own pain, trying to find a way through it. People thought I was flipping crazy going back to school at 50, right? So, I mean, just, and not listening to them and trusting my gut, like maybe this is for a bigger reason that I just don't yet know or understand. And my own mind saying, are you crazy? What are you doing? And the pain of everything I had been going through. 6, 7, 8. Okay. So now, 9, finding the treasure. We made 3 discoveries. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's really a way out of this? That was the treasure. And I'm like, okay, now I want to do something with it. 10 and 11 is the resurrection. And if I get this, that's where we get tested. So now I'm like, okay, I have to do something really powerful with this, but who am I to do something with this? What do I know? Who's going to listen to me? And, you know, all of that, right? And something in the way. And my family, they weren't in the way, but I was like, what, for me to be this vulnerable and this open about it, my entire story's in trust again. I talk about it all the time. How is that going to land with everybody? It turns out they were my biggest advocate. So that was okay. But getting knocked back, and even getting knocked back with triggers. Everybody in my community has triggers. How do we deal with them? Sometimes they're around to show us how strong we are, but sometimes they set us back and they're intensely painful. And then 12, return home, right? And that's where we become the mentors. And there's the PBT Institute, where I've taken what had been my biggest trauma, and now hundreds of people are benefiting from that experience. Did I walk through it the way I was supposed to?
Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. Because when I work with clients, and typically they don't know the hero's journey as well as you do, obviously, and so it takes a bit of time to do that. But it usually find that I've got to come back at them a couple different times because it doesn't fit that good. I mean, you just nailed it absolutely perfectly, and that's the beauty of this thing, is that it can resonate with so many people in so many ways, and that's why I love it. That's why I really made that it's the central theme of my book and the central theme of my coaching, because it's kind of the tool that I get people to kind of just, sit back and just kind of look at things from a big perspective. But here's the thing that I find most interesting is in my coaching, that is really, once you go through your hero's journey, you understand yourself profoundly. You understand the events that have created who you are today. What that does is it gives you the courage now to look at the present moment and say, okay, what's going on now? And what do I want in my future? And so my book is almost like 2 halves. The first half is you figure that. The second half is, well, how do we get to these future things that I want to get to? And so for me, I really dive into that limiting belief part that was uncovered a little bit in the hero's journey. Sometimes we have to go back even further and find out some of these early limiting beliefs that were created when we're little to protect us, right? Now, I'm not a therapist, so I don't go back there and dwell in that. But sometimes we have to, just look at some of these basic themes like I'm not good enough, or, I'll never be loved. some of these things that aren't true, but they get locked in. And so what I do is I call it the transformational ladder. Then we walk a little bit deeper and we go and we look at these limiting beliefs, and we start asking lots of questions of, when did this start? How did it happen? Who was in your life when it happened? What were the thoughts and ideas and events that were going on when you might have created these? And we simply just try to get our handle on some of these limiting beliefs. And then, not too scientific at this point, we just say, look, they're not true. And we just sort of reprogram them into positive, powerful beliefs. We walk back up the ladder, creating these powerful beliefs. And then I use meditation and powerful visualization to just program and lock that in, and to create the feelings, the emotions of the beautiful future that you're going to create now. That you understand yourself profoundly from being on the hero's journey. You understand some of your limiting beliefs that have maybe sabotaged you and realize they're not true. Now we focus on bringing up the emotion of, what is it really like to live into my true authenticity, to find my purpose maybe, and then feel those feelings, because that's where the law of attraction, I think, really, kicks in, is when not just thinking positive thoughts, but feeling it, literally sitting on your couch and reprogramming the neural networks in your brain, which we know is possible now.
Mm-hmm. So I always try to get into the minds of my listeners, viewers, and their thinking, and what they could potentially be thinking. And what if there's somebody who's saying, well, that's nice for you and all, but you don't know. This is just so horrible and it can never get better. And this is just the way it is, period. So I'm about to shut off this podcast because I don't even know there's no hero's journey here. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And this is obviously somebody who's been, because I know these types of people, and they've been hit hard, and possibly, probably more than once. So they don't know there's a hero's journey to their story, that could potentially be their story.
Yeah, I find that it's a little bit polarizing. Sometimes people, really shun away from that word hero. Uh, um, but when I use it in the context of your life, and just knowing that one of the things to think about is, in everybody's life, there has been times in their life where they have overcome issues. And it may be a long time ago and they forgot, so sometimes I say, you need to, remember that you're the hero of your life, that you've been a hero before. Remember that. And then take that into, say, you've done it before, you can do it again. But what I do say to that question that comes up a lot, of just total despair, and just like, that's a bunch of mumbo jumbo, what can I do? Really, sometimes you're so traumatized that your body is just can't relax, right? Your nervous system is just wired. So I usually say the very first thing to do, if you really can't even fathom that this could happen to you, is to do something to calm the nervous system down, right? Whether that's deep breathing or meditation or whatever it is. That's my kind of go-to when I get kind of wound up and anxious. And it really was part of my journey, was learning meditation. Sometimes people ask me, what's the one thing that you would, leave with somebody that, is transformational in life? I would say meditation in some form, because there's guided meditations. Most people say, oh, I can't meditate, my brain goes crazy. We'll start off with guided meditation. Have somebody guide you through, and just find out a way to relax your body, relax your just the tightness. And then maybe you could see some light at the tunnel. Is there a possibility? One of the profound things that happened to me, this just dawned on me, I haven't talked about it in a while, was I remember when I was in a real stuck period and I said the word, what if? And it cracked open this little crack. It's like, I'd been so sure, well, this will never happen. This will never happen. This will never happen. And I said, what if? And it cracked it open. And over the next few weeks, that little crack kind of opened into, like, okay, it might be possible.
Yeah, we teach something in the community called building bridges. And a bridge is, there are some people with who just, affirmations just doesn't work for them because it seems so far-fetched and unbelievable. But a bridge is a sort of believable statement that they could use instead. And that's one of the ones we use, which is what if. And all it does is crack open the door to possibility. And maybe that's what you need. And you repeat that enough, and that becomes the new belief, because then when you consider what if enough times, then you really believe, well, what if? And it starts grabbing hold. And I think you're so right. I love the idea of calming the nervous system, because sometimes if our nervous system is just freaking out, we can't hear, we're not willing. And there's that resistance, and calming the nervous system down can allow for the next set of thoughts, which could be, what if. And here's what I think too. I know people who've been through the most traumatic of experiences, and they have every right to stay stuck. They really do. By all rights, they have every right to stay stuck. But those are the people I find who experience the greatest joy when they move through that hero's journey. Because, first of all, you see how strong you are. You see that you're stronger than you think. You see what you're made of. And you have the gift of perspective because you know how dark it can be. Do you
Totally.
find that with the people you work with?
I do. Yeah. No question. And, one of the areas, you know, I tend to work more with people that haven't had some serious trauma. Um, but one of the things that I've always said is that because I didn't have a traumatic life, but I still had a lot of limiting beliefs that got created. And I used to have that imposter syndrome and say, I just don't have some of these traumatic stories. But it doesn't really matter. We're all humans. We're all going to go through the same thing, and our minds work the same way. Um, and so it really is universal in how we deal with that. But yeah, I find that if you've really had it tough and you come through it, you almost savor it more. You can kind of just see it because there's such a contrast.
And I agree with you. I don't believe that your life is just meant to be lived. It's meant to be experienced and really moved through. And it's when you embrace that hero's journey, yes, it can be dark, like in some of those stages, but it's only because you were willing to go through that do you get to learn the lessons and become that hero. Scott, what do you want to make sure everyone knows before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think one of the things, well, first of all, clearly that we're all heroes of our own lives. We really are. I mean, that's sort of the statement. It's why it resonated in my book. It's like be the hero of your life. And really, what I say is that you already are. You just need to remember. You just need to remember that you are, and that you've been going through these. And when you look at it sort of from this bigger perspective, you get a really good feel for that, and that you're not alone. And I also challenge now, your listeners to watch movies differently now. Watch for that hero's journey, and you'll see that there's this one character, and they're the ordinary world, and then they move into their journey, and it's just fun. It's interesting, and it allows us to understand that we're all the same. Superheroes on the screen are living the same situations that we are.
And it's interesting because not only is it you can think of movies where there was the hero's journey, but you can see the mentors,
Oh yeah,
like Yoda. It just came to mind, but right. I mean,
yeah,
mentors just in every
yeah,
movie. There's the hero's journey. There's a mentor, and that's what makes it interesting. Think about it. If someone were just la 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 going through life and nothing happened, would you really want to sit down and watch that movie? No, it would
right.
be very very boring. So yes, it can be traumatic. Yes, it can be hard. Certainly not boring though. And we always have the opportunity to do something with whatever it is that comes our way. And I look at it like if something's coming your way, if you're experiencing something, you're not here to be the poster child of whatever traumatic experience happened to you. You're meant to do something big, something profound, to learn it and then share it with everybody you learned it, that,
Yeah.
that that could benefit from it. So Scott, where do we go to learn more about you?
Yes, my website is jscottmcmillan.com. There you can find me on all social media. I got videos up on YouTube. I love to talk and dissect, the hero's journey about that. You can get a copy of my book there. I also, though, have a little PDF that I can give to people that walks you through finding your purpose through the hero's journey, which is kind of an interesting topic in itself. So people there, and maybe you can put it in the show notes. It's kind of a weird URL. I just have it. It's takehj.com. So take www.takehj.com. There you'll be able to pull down that PDF. It's got some exercises that walk you through how to understand and use the hero's journey to really maybe find your purpose in life.
Wonderful. Okay, and I'll make sure I have that in the show notes. And really, I would invite everybody to consider if you're listening, watching this now, saying, "I don't have a hero's journey." I bet you do. I bet you do. Take a look, and if you're stuck, well, you may be in the middle of your hero's journey.
Yeah,
So
and I think that's critical. And and in the book, I basically walk through a movie example. I walk through an example of my own life, and you can really start to see that we're all connected. We're all in our hero's journey, and we're all our own heroes.
Wonderful. Scott, I want to thank you so much. I know there are so many people who are like, maybe something to explore there. So that's great. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Were you walking yourself through your own hero's journey as Scott was going through the steps? Don't worry if it's hard to envision. It's a process and he can help. Stay in touch with Scott by going to jscottmcmillan.com, and we'll have all of his information in the show notes at thepbtinstitute.com/podcast. Here's my biggest takeaway: the 12 steps. 1. Ordinary world. 2. Call to adventure, the event. 3. Refusal of the call. 4. Meeting the mentor. 5. Crossing the threshold. 6, 7, and 8. The enemies, the allies, slaying the dragons. This can take years. 9. Finding the treasure. 10 and 11. Resurrection. We get tested, knocked back. 12. Return home. We become the mentor. How great is that? Speaking of great, have you checked out the PBT membership community? Imagine everything you'd ever need to become your physical, mental, and emotional best. Community, support, certified coaches and practitioners. You could schedule time with daily classes on all kinds of topics, curated experts teaching advanced strategies in the areas of health and mindset, spirituality, personal development. Imagine the most friendly, welcoming, and supportive place to become your best, and it's all online. Nothing like this exists, and I am so excited to welcome you. Go to thepbtinstitute.com/join to learn more. And like the show, please subscribe, rate, and review. And of course, if you know of someone struggling to heal from a betrayal, be sure to tell them about the show too. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to be with you next time, and here's to your breakthrough.